It's time we take a look at some religious data, or data, if that's the way you like to pronounce that word. By religious data, I mean data about religions. More than 80% of the global population identifies with some version of religious belief. If you take a look at this information from the Pew Research Center, you can see the distribution of religions. Approximately one-third of the world's population identifies as Christians. This does not necessarily mean that they're attending services every Sunday or Saturday, whatever day they would be practicing it on, but they identify as being Christians. You can see that Muslims, which is Islam, of course, almost 25% of the world's population. Unaffiliated, I'll talk about that shortly, 16.3%. Hindus, in other words, Hinduism, 15%. Buddhists, in other words, Buddhism, about 7.1%, and then folk religions and other religions account for the rest. Below is each religion's total estimated population for 2020. I realize it's not 2020 right now, but this is still pretty good data. Christianity, 2.38 billion. Islam, 1.91 billion. Hinduism, 1.16 billion. So if I ask you a question on the test, which religion or version of religion accounts for the single largest number of followers, you would say Christianity. Or number two would be Islam. Very good. Then you see Buddhism, 507 million, folk religions, 430 million, other religions, 61 million, Judaism, 14.6 million, and then unaffiliated, 1.19 billion. Yep. All right. How about some concentrations of religions? This is a kind of tricky graph, so let me explain it to you. Anything that is in this kind of darker blue means that it's located in Asia Pacific. What does that mean? That means the Pacific Islands, and it means Eastern, Southeastern, and South Asia. So, in other words, China, the Koreas, Japan, Taiwan, and then the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, and my apologies to anybody I missed. So that's what Asia Pacific means. Sub-Saharan Africa in the olive green means literally Africa south of the Sahara. Europe is in the orange right here. Then you can see Latin America is in this bronze color. And then you can see North America is in that lighter green. And then the Middle East and North Africa, that would be every place from Iran over to Morocco, basically, is in that blue. So, for example, if I looked at this right here, this orange color right here is Europe, whereas that green color right there is Sub-Saharan Africa. That kind of bronzish color, is Latin America. So this is overall global population. But notice this, Hindus, overwhelmingly concentrated in Asia Pacific, and in reality, South Asia. Buddhists, overwhelmingly concentrated in one area on the planet, which is Asia Pacific. And as you're going to see, this is mostly really Southeast Asia and then bits of East Asia and bits of South Asia. Folk religionists also in Asia Pacific. And then other religions, it's concentrated in Asia Pacific. All right, now, unaffiliated. Also Asia Pacific, you will see why momentarily. But notice, also a bit in Sub-Saharan Africa, and then in Europe, Latin America, North America. You can see that there's some of this. Muslims, so Islam, is this what you thought? Wouldn't you have thought it would have been the Middle East? Well, the thing is that the populations in the Middle East are not that large because the area is so arid, it's so dry. But Indonesia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all of these substantial Muslim populations. That's why it's skewed so heavily towards Asia and the Pacific. Then you can see also Sub-Saharan Africa and a bit of Europe as well. Christians, probably the greatest spread of one single type of religion is with Christianity. You can see that almost all the regions are relatively well represented, with the exception of the Middle East, North Africa. And then you can see Jews are concentrated in the Middle East, North Africa because of the state of Israel, of course, but then also North America. All right. And then, a little bit of Europe as well. Okay, this is majority religion by country. Red represents Christianity. So you can see that it is indeed very well spread. Then Muslims, Islam, notice basically this makes a line that goes from West Africa over here, like Morocco and Mali and places like that, all the way across the Middle East and then down into Indonesia. Then unaffiliated. See, this is why unaffiliated is so large. It includes China, which of course has 1.4 billion people, has a communist dictatorship, and really frowns on religion. North Korea, which persecutes religion. And then you can see even a bit of Japan is like this also. And then after that, Hindus, look at that. Completely concentrated in one area on the planet, which is South Asia, particularly in India. Buddhists also very concentrated in Southeast Asia. All right? And then Jews, you can see right here, are the majority in Israel. This is not Judaism. That right there is really unaffiliated in the Czech Republic and in Estonia and even over here in Albania. Majority minority. In other words, in the country you live in, if you practice a religion, do people who practice your religion account for the majority or the minority in the country? Nearly 75% of people live in countries where their religion is the majority religion. If you take a look here, you can see that Hindus are the most of all. And we know why, because they are concentrated in one single place, which is in India. Then you can see Christians also. We saw there's a very big spread, but Christians dominate many, many countries, including the United States. Muslims, where Muslims are at, they also tend to be the largest group. Unaffiliated, well, we know this is dominated by China. And then we hit places like this, where there are Jews, and they do not account for the majority. Now you might say, what about the state of Israel, where more Jews live outside of the state of Israel than live in the state of Israel? And then you can see Buddhists, folk religionists, and other religions as well. Take a look back at this map. Once again, you can see the kind of distribution of this. And I want you to notice both the unaffiliated with China, and then in South Asia, what's happening with Hinduism. All right, now let's look at religious diversity in the United States. And the first thing I want you to see about this map, which has all the counties in the United States on it, is this thing I just circled, where you can see it goes on the left from 0.2 to the right 0.9. And notice that the color gradation changes. It goes from a very, very light blue to a very, very dark blue as you get from 0.2 over to 0.9. A 1 on this scale, so 1.0, that would be above 0.9, would represent complete religious diversity. That means everybody in the county accounts for basically every version of religion. So you have complete diversity, equal numbers all the way across the county. Now, the average in the United States is 0.625. So relatively diverse, but in some places you can see it's significantly more diverse than in other areas. And if you look at what I just circled, you can see that the western part of the United States, the northeastern part of the United States, and then some parts of the very southern part, especially Florida, and then the southern part of Louisiana and part of Texas, also have great diversity. The least diverse part, the South and the Midwest and the Plain States. Can you see that? Look at the difference between these two. Good. Now check this out. You probably thought this anyway. Religious diversity is highest in urban areas. The 10 highest religious diversity sources are, and then you can see them right there. All of these either are fully urban counties or they are tied to directly to urban centers like major cities. So they would be like a suburban county. Just like Orange County is really a suburb of Los Angeles. I know people don't like to hear that, but in reality, that's what it is. And then religious diversity is lowest in the southern part of the United States and in rural areas. And that's probably what you thought anyway. And notice where it is. Mississippi, Mississippi, Alabama, Mississippi, 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 Arkansas, Mississippi, Mississippi, Mississippi. It fits exactly with the map that we just saw. So if you look, you can see that the South indeed has the least diversity. And then, basically the West as an entire region has the greatest diversity. And if you look at Southern California, where at least I live and many of you live, this is Ventura County. No, that's Santa Barbara County. This is Ventura County. That's Los Angeles County. That's Orange County. That's San Diego County, Riverside County, and then San Bernardino County. And that's generally what's considered to be Southern California. Sorry to the people who are taking this class up in Santa Barbara. I did not mean to misidentify your county, but indeed I did briefly misidentify it. So that area there, this is all considered Southern California. And notice that it is dark blue. It is indeed very diverse religiously.